A passenger train rolls into a major terminal like Penn Station, slows down through the tunnel, and comes to a complete stop at the platform with the brakes hissing and the doors sliding open. People step off, people step on, conductors check their watches, and the whole time that locomotive just sits there screaming at full throttle like it is trying to climb a mountain. Around 900 RPM, a turbocharged 16-cylinder diesel howling at what sounds like maximum effort, and the train is not even moving. The platform vibrates under your feet. Conversations become difficult, and if you are standing too close, you can feel that sound in your chest. The engine does not throttle down, because with its electrical system online, it largely cannot, and everyone on that platform is left wondering why nobody turned this thing off. This is the EMD F40PH, the locomotive that seemed unable to quiet down even when standing still. With head-end power engaged, the electrical system effectively required the engine to stay at a constant high RPM, and there was very little the engineer could do about it. Standing, moving, coasting, boarding passengers. In normal service, the engine speed stayed largely the same. High RPM hour after hour for decades. Crews called it the Screamer. The story starts in 1975 when Amtrak had a serious problem on its hands. Their new flagship locomotive, the SDP-40F, became associated with derailments and mechanical issues across the network, and several host railroads imposed restrictions or outright bans on the type. Amtrak needed a replacement, and they needed it fast. EMD's answer was the F40PH. They took a proven freight locomotive, the GP42, wrapped it in a streamlined cowl body, and added something called head-end power, spelled HEP. Head-end power provides electricity to the passenger cars for lights, heat, air conditioning, everything passengers expect. Previous locomotives relied on steam generators for heating, heavy, complex, and increasingly outdated. Head-end power was the future. Clean electrical power delivered straight from the locomotive. The problem was physics. American electrical systems run at 60 Hz, and to generate that frequency, the alternator has to spin at approximately 893 revolutions per minute. Because the F40PH's head-end power alternator was mechanically tied to the main engine, the engine itself had to run at about the same speed, effectively full throttle whenever head-end power was supplying power. The throttle in the cab only controlled how much power went to the traction motors. Engine speed? With head-end power online, it changed very little. You could be crawling through a station at 5 miles per hour, and the prime mover would still be roaring like you were running flat out on the Northeast Corridor. Crews figured this out quickly. If you had 2 locomotives on a train, you put head-end power on the trailing unit so the lead engineer got something resembling peace and quiet, while the second unit carried the noise. But on single-unit trains, no such luck. You sat in that cab with a turbocharged diesel screaming behind your head for 8, 10, sometimes 12 hours at a stretch. No real break. No relief. Just that constant howl wearing you down until you tied up at the end of the run and the ringing in your ears slowly faded. The cabs weren't well insulated either. Railroad.net forums are full of engineers describing what it was like. Earplugs helped to a point, but the vibration came through the seat, the floor, the walls. One former Amtrak engineer summed it up simply: you could feel it in your chest. And it wasn't just the crews. Stand on almost any platform where an F40PH was idling with head-end power online and you heard it, that constant turbocharged howl, the station itself vibrating around you. The locomotive would coast in, slow down, come to a stop, and the sound never dropped. Passengers learned to step back, not because the train was dangerous, but because standing next to it could be physically uncomfortable. Rapido Trains, in their technical documentation, described it perfectly, saying it was quite unique to see an F40PH coast into a station and come to a stop, all while roaring at full bore. They were not exaggerating. To many people, It really did sound like the locomotive was about to launch itself through the station wall. Between 1976 and 1992, EMD built roughly 450 F40PH locomotives. Amtrak took more than 200 of them. Metra in Chicago ordered a large fleet, and other agencies followed, including MBTA, New Jersey Transit, Caltrain, and VA Rail Canada. The F40PH became the face of American passenger railroading for nearly 2 decades, hauling trains like the California Zephyr across the Rockies, the Empire Builder through Montana, and the Coast Starlight along the Pacific Coast. And at every station stop, it screamed. The irony is that the F40PH was a good locomotive in most respects, reliable, capable, and mechanically simpler than what it replaced. Many engineers liked how it handled the acceleration, the braking, the responsiveness. What they did not like was spending entire shifts inside a noise that never stopped. By the late 1980s, railroads began looking for solutions. The fix was straightforward. Separate the head-end power generator from the main engine, add a small auxiliary diesel for electrical power, and let the prime mover behave like a normal locomotive again. Boston's MBTA was among the first to do this, rebuilding units into the F40PH2C configuration with an extended car body and a separate generator. When these locomotives idled, they actually idled, and the contrast with the original screamers was immediate. New Jersey Transit pursued similar rebuilds using Caterpillar generators, and Via Rail later rebuilt its fleet with separate head-end power systems. One by one, the original shaft-driven head-end power locomotives disappeared from everyday service. Amtrak retired its F40PH fleet by 2001, replacing them with the quieter GE Genesis locomotives. A couple dozen units were converted into non-powered cab cars, called cabbages by Railfans, and they still run today as silent control units for push-pull trains. Some original screamers survived into the 2020s. Metra in Chicago kept the largest remaining fleet, while others found second lives on tourist and industrial railways, including the Grand Canyon Railway and the Panama Canal Railway. But the sound is fading. As newer equipment replaces them, the constant high RPM howl is becoming a memory. Many remaining units are now effectively preservation pieces, running on borrowed time. There is a comment on YouTube from a former engineer who ran F40PHs for both Amtrak and New Jersey Transit. He described standing on a platform as a kid, watching the train arrive, the station shaking, the lights flickering on in the coaches, the engine screaming. Years later, he became an engineer and spent decades in that cab. His last line was simple: "I miss them." That is the thing about the F40PH. Nothing failed. That sound was simply the price everyone paid for keeping the lights on. 60 Hz required a fixed engine speed, and physics does not compromise. When railroads fixed the problem with separate generators, variable engine speed, and quiet idle, they fixed the sound too. Progress, efficiency, comfort, all the things you are supposed to want. And in the process, something disappeared from American railroads that will not come back. A locomotive that announced itself before you ever saw it. A sound that meant the train had arrived whether you were ready or not. The F40PH did not fade quietly. It just kept screaming until someone finally turned it off.